Hello and good morning and welcome to Verdicts. I'd like, if you will, to picture a scene. A team of paramedics is frantically working to save the life of a woman who's just been pulled from a burning building. Now, the police know who did it because the arsonist's owned up, but the law can't touch him. He's only 9 years old, and as our justice system stands, no one under 10 can be held responsible for a crime. Now, if you follow the papers these days, we seem to be suffering from an epidemic of so-called kiddie crime, from joyriding to petty theft, bullying to grievous bodily harm. Some of our little monsters really are little monsters, but because of their age, they are the untouchables of our community. Well, we can't lock up the kids. This morning, we're going to put the law on trial. We're asking our verdict jury, should we scrap the age of criminal responsibility? We asked our studio audience the same question, and you can see how they voted at the bottom of your screens. Now, our jury can't see those figures because we wouldn't want to influence their verdict. On then to the evidence before our People's Court. You're about to see two films based on events and circumstances that have actually happened. Now, the films will present the same event, but from two very different perspectives. Put yourself in our jury's position. Is what you're about to see a prank or a crime?
We found the kid hiding near the school. He didn't seem to know there was anybody in the building. Probably didn't care. He must have just run off. He didn't even look. Didn't surprise me. We'd run across him before. He hadn't been to school regularly for over a year. Seemed he'd been playing hooky, going off down the lake with his mates. They just hung round the place, nicking sweets, that kind of thing. But all we could do was give them a caution, speak to their parents. Not that that made any difference. They were obviously quite ready to turn to crime. They made a neat job of that window. Probably done it before.
Simon, the lights this way. Wait up!
They were probably looking for something to steal.
This is the science lab, lads. Test tubes, water, gas.
They must have planned to set the place on fire. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone to the science lab.
Aha! Watch this, lads.
The boy who actually lit the fire is the one we're holding responsible. The rest were just onlookers as far as I can see. As if it wasn't bad enough, he'd sprinkled white spirit all over the place. Then they ran off. No thought for what they left behind. The fire brigade had a terrible time getting the blaze under control. That part of the school's ruined. It'll cost thousands to put things right. And that caretaker could have been killed. The thought we can't do anything with that kid just makes me sick.
Well, our jury's had the chance to see that particular side of events, that perspective. Brian, what's your first thought? Was he reckless? Did he commit a crime?
Two reactions to it. First of all, I don't know whether the policeman was correct in his description of what occurred, and I don't need to know. It is sufficient that there is a case to be answered, and a court ought to be allowed to investigate the possibility of that being true. That's what courts are for. You don't have to agree with the policeman to accept that, in principle, it's possible that a 9-year-old could behave as the policeman had said.
OK, so superficially then, after seeing that, you'd say the law, the justice system ought to be able to get at that boy.
The law ought to be allowed to investigate that case.
OK, we've got agreement. We've got some agreement there, in fact. Well, our jury seems certain enough. Now, let's see if this next film changes their mind. It's the same event, but seen from a very different point of view.
I gave up going to school. I really hated the English teacher because she showed me up in class just because I was behind. To start with, I just stopped going to English lessons. But then, when it was English in the afternoons, I'd take the whole afternoon off. Me and my mates would go off and sit by the lake or whatever and just talk, smoke a few fags or listen to the radio. Most days it was just boring, but it was better than hanging around home. My mum and dad knew about it, but they didn't seem to care much. We got inside the school during the holidays. It was dead easy. We broke a window and went through into the toilets. We were just looking round, like, seeing what was there.
Simon, the light's this way. Wait up!
We ended up in the science lab. The place was just full of stuff. Acids and things. Test tubes. I was good at science. I liked it. So I showed my mates what was what. And we poured some white spirit. Then I showed them what it did. I poured a bit on a table and used my lighter. We just stood there and watched it. Then we heard a noise and I dropped the bottle. We thought maybe someone had found us, so we legged it. We ran off and hid. Later on, you could see smoke and flames coming from the lab and hear the fire sirens. I was dead scared. We were just larking about. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to hurt anyone.
Well, after our first film, we seem to have a jury that had already made up its mind. And after seeing that second film, are you quite so certain? Was that a crime or not?
I think it was a prank that went wrong.
And Brian, you were absolutely adamant it was a crime. Are you still
No, I wasn't adamant. I merely was adamant that the law should deal with it. My opinion is not changed by that film.
You still think the law should be able to speak to that little boy, if you like?
Indeed.
OK. Well, let's call our first witness. She's Beth Masala, a mother of 3 who is at her wit's end about what to do with her shoplifting children. Welcome, Beth, to our verdict witness box, if you like. What problems do you have with your children?
Mostly general naughtiness, but it's moved a stage forward now, and now they're into shoplifting. And
Regular shoplifting?
it has become quite regular, yeah.
A lot of people always say it's the parents' fault. Have you tried to do anything to stop them doing it?
Yes.
What have you done?
Yes. I've tried punishments, the usual things, being grounded for 2 weeks, bed early, not being able to play with the computers.
What about the people they shoplift from? Have you done anything and made them make amends?
The last time, I took both the boys up to the local shop and asked the shopkeeper if he actually had any jobs that they could do, more to embarrass the kids and try and stop them.
Have you asked the police if they could do anything?
Yes, I've taken both the kids to the police station. And I've had the local policeman come out to the house to speak to the kids.
Can they do anything else other than speak to them?
No, it's a big joke. Tom, my eldest, came out with plastic handcuffs on and went to the policeman. Yes?
Can you expect the law? And do you think the law should do anything about them? Because at the moment they're beneath the age of criminal responsibility.
At the moment, you can't expect them to do anything because they can't. They haven't got the powers to.
Do you want them to have the powers?
Definitely, yes.
But that might mean they could lock them up. Your children could be actually locked up if you take it to the nth degree, if you like.
But in the long run, wouldn't it be better if your child was locked up for, say, a couple of nights, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, than to carry on into a life of crime, get steadily worse and spend years and years and years in prison?
But you're their mum. Isn't it your responsibility?
To an extent, yes, but society's chosen to take away parental powers to an extent. So therefore, they must level it out. They must give something back.
Even if that means locking one of your boys up for a couple of nights?
Yes, definitely.
OK, Beth, thank you very much for joining us on our Verdict programme today. Our next witness is Louise Garner of the Law Society, a group that represents solicitors throughout England and Wales. Now, Louise, there's a mum, quite a dramatic statement that. She'd actually be prepared to see her children locked up to steer them away from a life in crime. Now, what would the Law Society's response be to that?
I think our response would be, firstly, to remember that these are children. It's not to prevent crime. We don't only have a responsibility to prevent crime, we do have a responsibility to try and do that, and that should not only focus on the courts and the justice system, but must focus on other areas of society, especially social services. They have a responsibility to help prevent crime. If there were more facilities available for children to do things, then perhaps they wouldn't go into crime quite so easily. OK, I'm going to be one of those right-wingers you read about sometimes. You're just going soft on these guys, aren't you? They're committing adult crime. Why shouldn't they get adult punishments? Most of them aren't committing adult crimes. Most of them commit very minor, petty offences.
Arson? Joyriding? Breaking into a house? They know that's wrong.
They do know that's wrong. Most of them don't mean to do it in the first place. I think what cannot be lost in all this...
They don't believe you.
I know.
They don't believe you.
I'm aware that it's not a policy that will the public will approve of. But you cannot forget that these are children. There must be a reason why they have got to the state that they're in. And there must be a reason and there must be a way to help them to avoid that situation.
OK, Louise, you're very caring, but are you right, I wonder? Thank you very much for joining us here today. Now, there were a couple of people up here who thought earlier that film that we showed clearly a criminal. Very briefly now, do you think that we should, having heard a couple of our witnesses, scrap the age of criminal responsibility, or keep it, or what?
I think we should, yes.
You think we should scrap it? Mm-hmm. That we should be able to get the justice system to look at these little boys and girls?
Yeah.
OK, so we certainly have different opinions here, different perspectives. Let's call our next witness. He's the Assistant Chief Constable Richard Thomas of Gwent Police, someone, if you like, at the sharp end of kiddie crime. Really, the police, you know, we often forget, they see the victims before anybody. Now, you've heard a whole range of perspectives here, but first of all, let's get it in context. Is kiddie crime a problem? Have we got problems with these under-10s committing crime?
Yes, it's a problem, and of course it's an increasing problem. As society has progressed and they have been exposed to more and more things at an earlier age, they are aware that they are doing wrong. And that's what we're talking about. Are they aware that what they're doing is wrong?
But aren't they being naughty? Really, they're only 9.
A 9-year-old who drives a vehicle around the road, crashes it through somebody's wall, walks away, and when the owner of the property comes to him, waves 2 fingers at him, knows exactly what he's doing is wrong, and he knows it is quite seriously wrong.
That happens?
It happens.
I'm going to be very rude. Did you ever commit what would now be called an offence when you were an 8-year-old? Did you ever throw a milk bottle and smash it? Or
stealing apples, perhaps, something like that. But
now, that's theft. So, you know, would you have liked it if the policeman had carted you off, stuck you in a court at the age of 8 or 9 for scrumping or whatever they call it in your particular part of the world?
But you're clouding the issue and saying putting them before the court. What we're saying is the criminal justice system has a right to examine what the 10-year-old has done. At the moment, there is no right. There is no redress to law at all.
Yeah, but say you had a persistent offender, a 9-year-old who was just at it all the time. You know who he is, could be a girl for that matter. You know who this child is. You might have to lock him up. Wouldn't that be just putting him in sort of a central college to learn how to commit crime?
There are 9-year-olds at the moment who persistently commit crime, and there is nothing any of us can do about it. If it meant stopping those crimes, and the crimes were serious enough, and they had to go into some sort of detention, which by law they can't anyhow, then I would say yes, of course. The majority are entitled to be protected from the minority, no matter what age they are, if they know what they are doing is wrong.
OK, thank you very much for your evidence there. I don't know if it's a popular view. Well, you know, it looks like we're going one way, and it looks like certainly our audience think that the age of criminal responsibility should be scrapped. Let's get at these little hoodlums, if you like. Now, let's call our final witness. Let's see his perspective. He's Mark Osu. Until 12 weeks ago, this young man, if you'll forgive me calling you that, was in prison. And you'd had problems, hadn't you, from a much earlier age with the authorities for crime?
Yes, I certainly did. I was involved in a number of different degrees of crime at a young age. And unfortunately, I fell for the pitfalls which were only left open to me at a young age. I've been through every system which could possibly be brought forward to a person of my calibre. Probation, detention centres, and last of all, the prison sentence, which was my last sentence, which was a 5-year custodial sentence. I am living proof that those sentences and those methods do not work.
We've had it suggested even by Beth here, our mum, that might actually help children to lock them up when they were under 10.
OK. What you will get if you lock children up under the age of 10 is this. I'm now 24 years of age, and I've got a wide variety of different knowledges of crime. You will get possibly a 13, 14-year-old having my mind, but at his age. If you start locking these youngsters up at that age, under the age of 10, because they will go through the different systems I've been through, but only be 8 to 10 years more advanced in criminalisation.
So it'd just be a better class of criminal, really, if you lock them up too young?
Yes, but a lot more ruthless at a younger age.
OK, Mark, thank you very much for your evidence today. Very interesting perspective indeed. Now, you're watching Verdict, the programme that puts the law on trial. Today, our question, should we scrap the age of criminal responsibility? Well, it's the moment of truth. It's our time now for the jury to consider this question.